families, many of them with children, and it is Limerick Limerick City Council is going to be overwhelmed with families in need of homeless accommodation unless something is done about this. So we've written this morning to the Minister for Housing saying the government need to step in immediately. They need to prevent these evictions and they should take over this apartment. They should purchase this apartment block to prevent families going into homelessness, including many children. The second example I just want to give you is from Dunleary. And this is really shocking. I raised it last week in the Dáil, and I also have to write to the Minister about this case today. Yesterday evening, I spent much of my day talking, and my office spent much of my day talking to a mother of 3 children whose husband works in a Dublin hospital, who's a healthcare worker, who was sitting in a park with her 3 children with nowhere to go because she'd just been evicted by a landlord. And when she contacted Dunleary Rathdown County Council, she was told to ring an emergency number at 4 o'clock. When we begged and pleaded the council, the only thing she was offered for her 3 children and herself was emergency accommodation up by Phoenix Park. Now this is when she has 2 children going to school in Shankill and another one going to school in Ballybrack. And then she discovered, because her husband worked 12-hour shifts on the front line of our health service and wouldn't be able to get to the place till 8:30, he wouldn't be allowed into the accommodation. So the family would be broken up. And rather than put herself through that, where there was no chance of her kids actually being able to physically get to school, or her husband being able to go into the homeless accommodation, she's now sleeping on a couch with friends in a house where people have COVID-19. But she was willing to do that rather than to go into the situation she was in. And we've had to write to the Minister this morning, and I put in a phone call to him to say something has to be done about this. So this is, and I am not joking you when I say I am inundated with families, with kids and working people who have jobs, many of them in the public sector, in the public service, who are now facing homelessness and who are being given absolutely no options. So we are facing a serious tidal wave of family homelessness because of the inaction on controlling rents, on stopping no-fault evictions, the lack of social housing and the lack of emergency accommodation. And there has to be urgent action to prevent no-fault evictions, to provide requisition properties or whatever is necessary in order to provide the homeless accommodation if we are going to stem this tidal wave that is coming down the line. So we'll be raising that as strongly as we possibly can with the government, but the alarm bells have to be rung about a situation which is really deteriorating quite disastrously.
It's okay, just a question I had just before you.
Yeah.
That's all right. There was a bill drafted by the Sláintecare community which I think was passed second stage a couple of months ago, which would effectively do that, and it would eliminate no-fault evictions, or at least require any landlord to contemplate the prospect of homelessness before somebody could be removed. Now, past second stage, and yet it doesn't seem to have done anything.
Well, it would have delayed the period. It would have given tenants a little bit longer. But of course, the problem in many cases is people don't want to have the confrontation with landlords who are pushing them out. But you're right, no action has been taken by the government on this, even to delay people being driven into homelessness. And those very same people are then knocking on the door of the council. In many cases, their rents were being significantly subsidised with HAP or RAS, so public money has gone into these properties and into the pockets of the landlords who then evict people, and then those tenants come rocking up on the door of local authorities pleading for emergency accommodation, and the emergency accommodation isn't there. And I'm particularly worried about the children. Right, we got a previous commitment from, I think it was this government, when we had similar cases pre-COVID of children being sent to completely inappropriate, unsuitable emergency accommodation at very far removed where they go to school. We got a commitment this wouldn't happen, and now it's starting to happen again in a serious way. And even the simple thing of self-accommodation, I don't know if people know what that is, currently is being denied, right? So where previously, where the local authority was unable to source appropriate homeless accommodation at a reasonable distance for the children to go to school and so on, families were given the option of finding a hotel in their own locality, which the local authorities would then pay for. They're even being denied that option. They've been told, no, you can't do that. You can't go and find yourself a hotel. You've got to go into town. Otherwise, you've got nothing. And the result is I'm left with a mother with 3 children sitting in a park yesterday at 4 in the afternoon, bawling, crying, completely humiliated and absolutely terrified. And I can absolutely tell you we're going to face a tidal wave of this stuff unless an emergency package of measures is brought in by the government to stem it.
I'll be brief. Just want to say a few words in relation to the Health Committee tomorrow. It's meeting in relation to the future of Sláintecare, and obviously some of the commentary over the weekend in relation to Sláintecare by Robert Watt was quite kind of bizarre in some ways. He's in some ways saying that there should be a minimalist approach to the rollout of Sláintecare. So I think, many of us that have, are calling for universal healthcare in relation to the health service are kind of asking questions the pace of change in relation to Sláintecare, and there's been obviously stops and starts in relation to its implementation. So tomorrow we'll ask officials from the Department of Health. I'm not sure if Robert Walter is going to be there. Actually, I have to kind of clarify that with the Department, the Health Committee. But obviously we'll be posing them questions in relation to the rollout of Sláintecare, and it's why is it kind of has a kind of stop-start kind of process in its process at the moment. I missed that, Paul.
Can you comment just on Tony Hoolan who's going over to the job in the TCD, and it turns out that it's going to be a secondment.
Right.
Therefore, the Department of Health is going to be paying for his wage for the open-ended nature of it.
Okay. And how long? Do you know how long it will be for? Obviously, he's still the chief health advisor. Obviously, still.
CMO, but even once he stops being the CMO, he goes to Trinity.
Right.
And it will be an open secondment, so no term.
So he could do that for the next couple of years.
The Department of Health.
Right. Right. Okay. I don't think that's good at all. I think you've asked me the question again. No, I think if he goes to TCD, there should be another CMO in to replace him, because he can't do 2 jobs. You would think a very, very important job is in the health service, but also obviously his educational post in TCD is important as well. But you have to I think you would have to pick one or the other. And in the meantime, if he goes to TCD, which I think he is, then there needs to be a new CMO to replace him.
Just on that idea that you may have his pay as professor, with another CMO coming in.
Yeah. So that will. I'm guessing the gross total of that will be a lot of money. So I think in this situation, Dr. Holohan would have to make a choice whether he's moving on. Obviously, he wants to move on. That's fair play to him. But I think in this situation, the Department of Health, the Minister for Health, would have to make a decision to replace Dr. Holohan at this stage.
I'm just sure people before Crop got the plug of its life, which you would have not even comprehended in your wildest dreams when Bella Hadid shared one of your posts on Instagram. She's followed you. Have you followed her back?
He has.
Message you? Did you message her back?
I think the reason probably why I came across the radar of Bella Hadid is because of a video from the Dáil where I was speaking about Palestine and the double standards in terms of Western policy towards occupation and invasion, which went viral around the world, I think, and she's half Palestinian, so I'm assuming that is the reason I came across her radar. I wasn't aware of Bella Hadid, but it would appear she's an activist and an advocate on behalf of Palestine and women's rights and progressive causes. So I'm very glad to have made contact with an activist, and I'm always keen to meet activists who are campaigning on similar issues to ourselves, and I did send back a message thanking her for the follow and the share, and just saying I'm always glad to be in touch with activists who campaign on similar issues to ourselves.
She hasn't gotten back yet.
I honestly don't know, to be honest. I don't know. To be honest, we've a lot on our plate in terms of issues to campaign for, so I know it's of entertainment value to people out there, but I think I'm more focused on the campaign issues, and it would seem Bella Hadid is focused on the substantial issues rather than the glamour of it all.
Can I just ask about Ukraine? We were reporting in the Irish Daily Mail this morning that the Department of Integration is not looking at properties before they place Ukrainian refugees, so there's no kind of inspection done before these people are placed. I was in one hostel yesterday and the residents were saying that it was cramped, there's no hot water, it's cold, it's dirty, the food's not up to standards. Do you think that there needs to be some kind of inspection there before we place people? And do you think it's good enough that the government are putting people in this accommodation that's not up to standards?
Well, we actually are planning today. I mean, we have a lot of issues we're talking about here, but one of the other things we've agreed to do is ask a series of questions about what are exactly the details of the government's plans in terms of the integration and accommodation of the people fleeing this terrible war in Ukraine. And absolutely, we need proper vetting and proper standards of accommodation for anybody who's put into emergency accommodation, because there's also been an ongoing crisis in terms of the standards or the lack of standards in emergency and homeless accommodation, and now it looks as if we're going to face a similar situation, or may face a similar situation for Ukrainian refugees. It's just not acceptable. So the government have to put the resources in to ensuring that emergency accommodation, whether it's for people who are homeless already in this country or Ukrainian refugees fleeing this terrible situation, needs to be of the best standard. And that should, I think, mean also emergency measures to requisition empty apartments and empty hotel space, which is littered around this city. It was always unacceptable that there were empty apartment blocks being sat on when there were people homeless. In a situation where we now have both a spiking homelessness situation and Ukrainian refugees desperately in need of accommodation, we need emergency measures to ensure they have proper accommodation and the requisitioning of suitable available properties, whether it's empty apartments or hotels.
These refugees were saying to me yesterday that they had returned to the processing unit in Dublin Airport and they had asked to be moved to alternative accommodation and that they were told that they couldn't be. Do you think, that the government needs to be doing more and they need to be kind of listening to these people, that if they go to IPAS and they say, look, we're in this accommodation, it's not up to standard, that they should be able to be moved on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got to put people in decent accommodation. You can't put people in substandard accommodation. But tragically, there's a history of the government doing that with people who are homeless in this country. And I would now seem that some Ukrainian refugees may be put in the same situation. This should be the moment when we finally get on top of the homeless and housing crisis in this country, both to assist the Ukrainian people fleeing war, but also the thousands of families and children in this country who are in homeless accommodation. They need to have proper places and accommodation, and indeed, we need more actual purpose-built housing, which we don't have. And now, if you like, the chickens are coming home to roost on the failure of the government to address the housing crisis, both in terms of a worsening homelessness situation and desperate people from Ukraine who need accommodation and decent quality accommodation.
Everyone good?
Is that okay?
Thanks, Bill. Thank you.